obviously, we have to cover the horrible breaking story, and that is moving on. And tributes have now flooded in for the 9-year-old boy, Andre Glessner, who has been named as the youngest victim in the German Christmas market attack.
Yes, and taking to social media, his mother called him "my little teddy bear" and said he would always live in our hearts.
The attack left 5 dead and over 200 injured, with some remaining in a critical condition.
Well, that's as the hard-right Alternative for Germany prepare to march near the scene of the attack, with German authorities coming under fire after warnings about the suspects were reportedly received last year but deemed unspecific.
Oh, well, joining us now is political commentator Andy Williams to bring us up to date on this story. Andy, it's a difficult conversation to have at any time of year. Obviously, the fact that it is so close to Christmas. This poor little boy has now been named 9 years old. His mum's given an incredible tribute when you read it, and it's one of those things that's like, OK, right, and breathe. What does this mean now for the political situation in Germany? We know there's a far-right march taking place today. What does it mean for the political situation in Germany and, by extension, the whole of Europe?
Well, firstly, obviously, it's a really horrific incident. And I think we have to, as you rightly did, Dawn, prioritise saying that and recognising that, and particularly at this time of year. I think there are obviously questions for the security services to answer. The fact that that car was able to drive into the Christmas market was, as far as I've read, a security failing in itself. So that's a problem. But in terms of the political situation, I am not surprised, but I'm also completely horrified that the AfD, which is, let's be absolutely clear about it, a neo-Nazi party. It is not a right-wing party. It is a far-right party in Germany. And that they have decided to march on the area shows exactly how they are willing to exploit horrendous incidents like this for their own disgraceful political gain. And I think we need to be really wary now about parties like the AfD gaining even further traction. And let's be clear, they're already polling very well in Germany. They won their first statewide election recently. They do not have the answers to the problem that we're talking about here. This is not about immigration. This is about a madman who has, of his own volition, for whatever reason, decided to do something totally unconscionable.
And Andy, there is clearly a lot of anger in Germany at this incident, and you've mentioned the perhaps security failings of lack of barriers at certain entrances of this German Christmas market. The Interior Minister for Germany is saying that the heads of domestic and foreign intelligence in Germany are going to be questioned by a parliamentary committee, suggesting that there was some intelligence failure as well. So should people's anger be directed towards authorities rather than immigration or immigrants?
I would have said so. I mean, from what I've read, this the suspect was first sort of reported to the authorities as far back as 2013 in terms of making threats of violence, other sort of incidents, and that's 11 years ago. So the fact that he was allowed to continue living, normally in society without being at least questioned, at least sort of apprehended in some way, there are obviously serious questions. My question to people who would say, well, the AfD, good on them, and their march, they've got the answer is, somebody who's lived in Germany for 18 years, who came to work as a doctor, a highly qualified psychiatrist, how do you stop people like that, who have lived in a country for 2 decades, suddenly committing a horrendous act of violence? The answer is not that you close your borders.
GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now with the updates on this story. Mark, thank you for joining us this morning. Mark, a horrific story at any time of year, just before Christmas, even more poignant. What's the latest on it?
Well, some very difficult questions that are facing the German authorities, not just about warnings apparently received by from the Saudi Arabian government and indeed by a member of the public, but also just how this vehicle was able to get access to that Christmas market in Magdeburg on Friday. Apparently it had used an emergency service vehicle access point. How that was available for a civilian vehicle to get in there will form, again, part of the investigation. But on the more pertinent point first, I think, in with regard to the warnings received by the German authorities. This man, Taleb Abdul Mohsen, had come to Germany in 2006 to seek asylum. He was eventually granted asylum under Angela Merkel in 2016. And during that time, on multiple occasions, there were diplomatic cables that came from the Saudi government warning of this individual's extremist views, accusing him of people smuggling. He was involved apparently in trying to seek refugee status for a number of Saudi women over that time as well, and apparently was highly critical of the German government and the way in which it had treated Saudi women, according to reports. And then last year, there was a separate approach to German authorities warning about this individual's postings on social media, which appeared to be very threatening in nature in terms of doing harm to German members of the public there. But it seems that very little, if anything, was done on the warnings, first of all, from Saudi Arabia, and then that separate warning last year from a member of the public. So all of that will have to be factored into the investigation going forward. What the German authorities are clear about is that this was a deliberate ramming attack. And I think for many members of the public, and indeed those that are going to be taking part in this protest today, issues around whether he was an Islamist or an anti-Islamist really will be lost here, because what they are very concerned about is that you have someone who came to Germany as an asylum seeker, who was granted the protection of the state in 2016 and then turned on his adopted country in the most horrific way, killing 5 people and injuring more than 200, with some real fears that that death toll could increase in the hours or days ahead.
Mark, one of the positives to come out of this story I was reading, if there is that the German people will not be bowed down by this. There's a story in, I think, the Times today about they are still, obviously that market is closed down, but the Germans are not giving in to terrorism. They're getting on living their lives. They're going to their Christmas markets. They're drinking their glühwein. They're not giving in to this, which is surely the attitude we all need to take to these attacks, because terrorism only works when it terrifies us.
Yes, absolutely. And you will see that after any kind of attack that takes place in any country around the world, where people will come together and will be determined through a voice of solidarity not to be bowed by any kind of atrocious act like this. But that doesn't really mitigate from what is some real concerns in Germany and other European countries about what they see as uncontrolled mass migration and the potential security risks of that, not necessarily knowing the full facts about people that are coming to a country and being granted leave to remain in that country. We face those concerns here in the UK, in other European countries, of course, including Germany. And as far as Germany is concerned, they go to the polls early in the new year with a resurgent right of centre party there in terms of their anti-immigration policies, or at least their policies which are very geared towards the security of Germany and not at all in favour of what they would say is mass and uncontrolled migration.
Okay.